Welcome, everybody, to the Wellness Founders Podcast, where we explore the business of wellness and the people creating the future of well-being. And I'm really excited today to have Laura Munkholm of Walla. And joining me as the co-founder and president of Walla, it's a leading business management platform specifically for boutique fitness studios. Laura has spent years helping studio owners grow thriving connected communities. Before that, you're a wellness consultant. You're working directly with studios, helping them improve their retention, their revenue, their experience. And as of today, really cool announcement that I saw on your LinkedIn, which we spoke about briefly the first time we met, was an announcement. You guys closed $5 million of strategic investment led by Social Leverage and Ancona Capital. And that's really, from what I read, to accelerate this AI-powered studio performance software that you guys are putting into all the things that you're doing. So first, congrats on that. How are you feeling in this moment and about this accomplishment?
A bit of relief and ready for, a weekend. It's been a wild couple of months. Just, obviously anytime you're fundraising, it doesn't mean your day job stops. So I think that's been the biggest thing is we've had some amazing investors. These Ancona and Social Leverage actually have been investors in Walla for a while, and just really experiencing the belief in what we're doing and kind of doubling down on their investment has just been so confidence building for our team. And it's really nice now to have all the paperwork done and be able to move forward and really put the capital to work.
Awesome. So tell me about this journey of fundraising. Obviously, you guys come from a background of doing fundraising before. Maybe what are the different stages that you've done in this fundraising process? What have you learned from the whole thing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I knew going into running a software company that it's expensive. It's not something that many people can bootstrap when you're building software this big. And so while I personally didn't have experience fundraising, my business partner did, and that was tremendously helpful. But I will say, it's a big time commitment and a big energy commitment. So we've gone through a few different stages, kind of early days, pre-seed and seed rounds, where honestly, it was kind of fun. I would say for me as somebody who has a background in sales and really enjoys talking about something that I'm wildly passionate about. And of course, my company is the thing I am most passionate about. It was enjoyable and really exciting to talk to investors who, in the tech space, a lot of them are invested in, fintech or med tech or different areas that aren't necessarily in the fitness landscape. And so really educating them on the opportunity in our little niche of kind of the wellness world has been really interesting. That stage, the early stages of fundraising, is much more about the story and the belief in what we're doing and really the problem that we're going to solve. And it's not necessarily, of course, you're bringing data to the table of, this is the opportunity and this is the addressable market, but it's not historical, financials. Later in the game, which we're in right now, it's all about metrics. It's all about, have you hit the goals you set out to hit? What are you projecting based on past performance? So, it's a little less of storytelling and a little bit more of, we've proved it and we can continue to prove it at an even more accelerated pace with this funding. So very different as you get into A and later stages of funding, the process and the due diligence that investors do.
And you mentioned the difference between the wellness industry and a lot of these investors being maybe traditionally focused on tech, and you're kind of in the intersection of that, wellness tech. What are the main differences as far as how you're articulating the value, especially in the early stages when you don't have the metrics?
Yeah, so the differences in explaining wellness technology and fitness, particularly our niche, boutique fitness, the technology needed, and let's say, tech behind the scenes in banking or, med device or healthcare, is we have a very consumer-driven market. It's almost a two-sided marketplace, right? So you've got the consumers who are buying from our customers, but we're providing the technology to both both ends of the spectrum. So it still falls under software as a service, but it also has a consumer edge to it. And I think the coolest part about telling that story is we get to have an impact far greater than just our customer. We get to have an impact on the overall fitness, wellness lifespan of their end consumer. And what we do can have such a network effect where, banking software, maybe you get a referral from another business, but you certainly don't have an end consumer sitting there raving about it. Where in our worlds, maybe it's the tracking classes in your app or the confetti burst that you get when you book a class in the Walla app that gets a consumer excited and gets them to step back in the door, and they tell somebody about that. So we have a really interesting and I think unique part of the industry. And also, right now, we're just seeing such an explosion in the wellness industry and investment in the wellness industry, especially with Gen Z coming into kind of the age of being able to command a wallet and be able to make financial decisions in a household. And as we're seeing through all the data, Gen Z cares a lot about wellness and prioritizes wellness spend over some of the traditional, consumer areas that we've seen boomers, millennials even spend money on. So that's been an exciting story to tell.
And as you've told that story, and I'm sure you've told the story in a lot of different versions, and the messaging has changed over time, how has that changed for you? Because I know you could get pretty excited about it, right? And you're
Yeah,
bringing it to investors, and there's like some tweaking of the messaging that maybe doesn't focus as much on the confetti, but focuses
right.
on like the consumer experience or whatever it might be. I'm curious, how has your messaging changed over time, and how has it changed
Yeah.
with these different rounds of fundraising?
It's a great question. So, how has our messaging changed? Well, I can tell you straight up, initially, we came out of the gates saying we're going to be better than the 800-pound gorilla in the space, which is MindBody. So, I mean, anybody who knows the wellness and fitness world, MindBody has been the leading platform in this industry since its conception. Um, so we definitely kind of led with we when we're raising money, we know their weaknesses. We know the struggles of the modern consumer using their products. We know the struggles of the modern business that's trying to grow into a much more innovative state and is feeling left behind. So while that's still important because MindBody still does command quite a bit of the market, we're less focused on just competing with them, and we're more focused on, hey, we're trying to step out of this, kind of rat race completely. And that's a big part of what this last raise was focusing on almost creating our own category of software. It's not just studio management. This is performance software for fitness businesses. And we're doing that by leveraging AI in ways I'm sure we'll talk about during this podcast, but also focusing on profitability, like really getting down to why are these businesses struggling when we know there is such a demand for their services. There are often stats that are thrown around about the fitness industry that, for sure less than 50% of the boutique fitness businesses are profitable. And we've seen stats as low as 17% are sustainably profitable. So let's say, greater than maybe 15 or 20% profit margins. And to me, to my business partner and I, that was just frankly unacceptable. So that's really how the narrative has changed is we can have a greater impact on this industry, and it's not just about beating the old player anymore.
Yeah, and say you're going into an industry like this, and you look at a big player like MindBody, and you're observing and researching where are the challenges that they're going through, that things that maybe we can solve or have a unique competitive
Mhm.
advantage. If you're giving advice to someone who's wanting to go through that same process you did, where would you tell them to look, and how is it that you did that? How is it that you found those things that you're like, okay, we
Yeah.
can do that better than them?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had a unique advantage in that, I had been a consultant for hundreds of studios that were using their product, so I knew the pain point, and I would say anybody going through that process where they're trying to, unseat the leader is research, tons of research on user pain points, consistent feature requests. Um, but then taking it a few steps backwards and foundationally looking at if it's technology, like, does this technology scale? If it's a business model, does this business model support where the industry is going? Um, as all of us know now, technology is moving so quickly. I mean, it's my job to know what's happening in AI, and it's hard for me to keep up with what's happening in the world of AI. So I think many businesses are vulnerable right now, and it's really going to be up to those people who are really good at understanding the client, understanding the pain points, and really not just the pain points, but the end result the client is looking for, and then thinking beyond it. It's my business partner's favorite quote. Is always Henry Ford's, if I would have asked them what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And I love that our company runs that way. Yes, we take the feedback. Yes, we research, and then we think beyond it. What's possible? We look outside this industry. We look towards, I don't know, companies like Airbnb or, some of the really interesting software platforms in HR, banking, tourism. There's so much fun innovation happening, and we can learn from each other.
So what I really loved about some of the consulting background that you had was you got a chance to be hands-on with some of these businesses that were using a competitor, and you're able to see some of the patterns, some of the challenges that they were going through. Walk me through, like, what were the things that you saw, and was that the trigger that it's like, oh, I need to build something else, or how did that journey start?
Yeah, gosh, I mean, there are too many to mention here, but I would say an overarching theme throughout was, MindBody and other platforms out there, not just MindBody, really were the core management system for a studio's scheduling and booking and billing. But as businesses evolved and they realized, gosh, they need to do like pretty substantial heavyweight marketing, and they actually have teams of people that they have to manage outside of just a schedule, like desk shifts and sub management for the classes. And also, gosh, we need text messaging and we need phone, and all of these different little nuances that you need to run a business. The answer most platforms had was, "Oh, we'll just integrate. We'll pull somebody in." And all of these companies formed out there, right? It kind of created this little mini ecosystem in our industry of, okay, we solve this very narrow specific thing for gyms, or we solve this very narrow specific thing for cycling studios. Um, and we kind of, I mean, I looked at that as very challenging to scale. If you're trying to grow a franchise and you have to train your franchisees, and the franchisees have to train their staff that turns over every 6 months on 4 different products, 5 different products that you're using, you know, we looked at it and said, it is actually quite important to build all of this under one roof for scalability, for client retention on our part, because we don't want them getting attached to a third party product and then that third party product going to them and saying, hey, we like our integration with, so and so platform better, you should move to them. So we've really been intentional about designing an all-in-one platform. So that's number one pain point that I heard. The other one was really this kind of concept of the people who built MindBody, Mariana Tech, Wellness Living, some of the platforms out there that were the kind of main players in the space prior to us coming on board, um, were really started with great intentions and started by people who had experience in the industry, but they were so far removed from the industry at this point that they weren't really solving the day-to-day challenges. They weren't stepping in the doors of these businesses every day and really experiencing how the transition to having a salesperson at the front desk is really standard now, or the transition to leaning into wearables or whatever the newest technology is really widespread. So one thing that I think, and I would give this advice to anybody, is if it's not you, the person on the team that's designing the software, designing the product, have somebody on your team who is living and breathing that industry, that client's life, that client's journey every day. Because the number of times I hear, oh my God, it's so obvious you guys have done what we do. It's so obvious that you've been in our shoes because you just solve all of these little problems that we just had turned into so many headaches. We didn't even know what life was like without them anymore. Um, and I think that's really played to our favor. Lastly, I would say in any industry, there's such an opportunity to be a, an education leader, especially if you're selling to smaller businesses, businesses where there are owner operators. Everyone's just learning as they go. Maybe they had a business background, but oftentimes they don't. And most people feel the loneliness factor of being a leader in their business, and any opportunity there is to build community around education or to provide not just a million blogs written by AI, but valuable content that speaks to them, that's engaging, that encourages engagement, is really where we've seen an impact as far as our client retention is concerned and their success in the software.
The point that I really love there, living and breathing the industry, living and breathing what it
Hmm.
is that you're doing makes such a big difference in everything. And it was a big experience I had as well building the agency because I spent so many years building a personal brand, writing a book, doing a YouTube channel, figuring out what resonated as far as my own voice, how to write. And through all that, by just living it, by just being it, it's so much easier to relate to people. It's so much easier to
Yeah.
relate to a potential client, to a potential customer, to an audience member, where you can actually feel like I'm in your shoes, you're in my shoes. Like we
Yep.
understand these things, and I love
Yeah. So, how much
the
easier, like when you're talking in sales conversations, you probably have such
yeah
an easier time closing a deal or getting somebody to buy into what you're doing because you speak their language. Like the actual, vernacular that you use
yeah,
is the same. It's amazing.
and the part that I think is crucial there is the education, like you said, in communicating in a way where, in your instance, you're building a product that obviously needs a success to have adoption and to have retention. And I'm curious how it is that you approach the educational process and where is that line of like, okay, now we're providing all this strategy and the software versus like, okay, we can't necessarily get our hands on there and I can't be the consultant
Right.
again, but I can do
Right.
this and this and this. Like where do you draw that line for you at this stage?
Yeah, the way we did it at first was we really leaned into partnerships, and there are groups of, whether it be agencies, individual consultants, people who are industry experts that I had built relationships with over the years, or team members of ours had built relationships with over the years. We leaned heavily into those partnerships to say, hey, listen, you are like the godfather of sales in yoga studios, or you are just like the best digital marketer out there for yoga businesses, Pilates businesses. And we invited them in and gave them the mic. We said, hop on to we've had a monthly webinar series for 3 years now. I don't think we've missed a month for 3 years. And sometimes it's just me, but oftentimes it's a guest like that. And we try to really add value not just through our opinions or voices, but through the people that we trust in the industry. And that way, yeah, we are asking clients to spend a little money sometimes with those consultants, but also we learn from those folks about what to build next in our software. Like they've been a critical aspect of how we've designed and evolved our software over the years because they're the ones seeing, the data behind the scenes, like this is moving the needle and this isn't. So we really need to lean heavily into X, Y, or Z part of the product. Um, but I will say, I know you mentioned, without us getting our hands dirty and doing it ourselves, we actually did just hire what we're calling our studio growth consultant, who is going to be, supporting businesses in successfully using the software, not necessarily being like their big business coach, but looking at, one of the ways we're leveraging AI is we've got all of this data about the studios. We're giving them kind of a prescription, an AI prescription. Like, here are the goals you set for yourself. Here's what you're meeting. Here's what you're not. w- right when you open the software, it'll say, hey, you're crushing it on your member growth over the last 6 months, but your MRR isn't where you wanted it to be. So, here are some suggestions, maybe looking at upsell programs with member perks or something that nudges them into getting their clients into higher tier memberships. We also now have a button in there that just says, hey, let us help you. Let Walla help. And that's going to connect them with our studio growth consultant who can help them just kind of, turn some dials or help build things in the software that should move them in the right direction.
The mindset here for me that really comes through is who, not how. And it's when
Mm,
you're engaging strategic partnerships, when you're hiring the right people, getting, the experts involved in niche problems, niche solutions, things where maybe you're looking at building a new product, maybe you're looking at building a new feature. A lot of people start with, how do I do this? And my mindset's always been, who does this? Who does this for me? So we
yeah.
we were in a stage where we were looking at, okay, well, how do we add paid acquisition to part of our product set? And it was like, who's the smartest person I know who does this? Let me go to him
I love it.
first, and let me bring him in because he's going to be able to speak so much more eloquently to all this. And if you can make it a win-win partnership with that person, there's so much expertise in the world now, and there's
Yeah.
literally no access barriers to people all over. So that's been a really resonant lesson for me. And when
Yeah.
you think about your roadmap right now, obviously you have this investment. Like, there's who gets involved at this stage now that you might be able to afford paying for more experts, or what becomes the next development of all this AI that you're going to be
Yeah.
implementing?
Yeah, well, the first part of that was bringing on our studio growth consultant. The next piece is really getting some heavy hitters in the AI engineering space. So we know we kind of, you know, looked at our team and said we had a lot of engineers and a lot of folks that were very interested in continuing to work on AI, but that wasn't necessarily their background before. So the investment is twofold. A, we're going to be able to invest in some of the who people in the AI and machine learning space. Um, but then also into really, I mean, hitting the gas hard on marketing because I think there's an opportunity now to stand out in a very crowded sea of software platforms for the fitness industry as a whole. And really say, listen, we've created our own category here. There is nobody that can touch what we're doing. And I'm sure some people will start to catch up. AI is on everybody's roadmap right now. But what I know we have over our competitors and just in general in this landscape is the heart of people and the minds of people who have been in the studios and also outside the studios in the tech world. So we've got a really beautiful marriage of, yes, we know the problem and we know what's needed and we know what's possible with innovation. So it's kind of a fun dance. You would laugh if you watched our team together. Our head of product has taken probably 300 classes at, Solid Core or different Legree Pilates studios in the last year. And then we have me, who's worked behind the scenes in studios, our sales team. Everybody basically has owned a studio that's selling software for us. And then my business partner, who's built software for the last, 25, 30 years and very successfully with some really top tier engineers. So these mind melds are just so interesting. We get to bring problems to the table and, you know, bet on solutions almost. It's a blast.
I get curious about, in a team environment like that, where you have so many people with expertise, how is it that you get to decisions? How is it you get to priorities, especially in a roadmap
Mm,
where you're living in this AI world is changing so fast? Like, you could feel like you know something, and then
yeah.
the rug's pulled the next day. How do you guys as a team approach this now, having this funding, and like, okay, we're going to allocate this here. This is the priority. We're all on board.
Right. Right. I mean, I will say it's shifted. Like it used to be that probably 60 to 80% of our time was spent really getting to not just feature parity with a MindBody or with some of the competitors we have, but making sure it was better than feature parity, and as far as the kind of nuances are concerned. And then the rest of the time was spent on innovation, ideation, really prioritizing outside the box things. I would say now we're almost flipping the script on that because we've gotten to feature parity. We know where we are. Of course, there are feature requests from our clients, and we always prioritize part of every release, like every sprint that we have going. A certain portion of it is for existing client feature requests. And something we do that I know is not common in software is that we actually publish our product portal to our clients. So inside of Walla, you can go in and see what's being considered, what's planned, and what's launched, and you can vote on it. So we take a ton of feedback from our clients and we get their detailed use cases. And, as things start to crawl up in like okay, now we've had 20, now we've had 30 requests for this, it gets put into under consideration. And then we start getting the details. Our product team interviews them. And then, that 30-40% of time, we're really making sure our clients are happy. And I want to, obviously we want to innovate and keep them ahead of the game, but we also need the software to function for them day to day so that they can, run a business they know how to run and not constantly be learning.
And it seems like that kind of environment just creates this really fast pace. And I'm curious, what are the biggest challenges of working in a fast pace where you have investors, you have other people who have stake in how things are going, outside decision makers, applying some sort of pressure? Like, how have you handled that personally? How has the team handled it? And
Mm.
what have you seen from that?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that's probably why I do so much yoga and breathing classes and ice plunging and all of it. It's how I keep my sanity. It's a lot of work. And I would say we're not a team environment where people, clock out for lunch for an hour, clock back in an hour later and, totally detach. We're definitely a very passionate, engaged team, and we do move quickly and um we do work hard, but I find that we've attracted a really great group of people who are so invested in the success of our clients and that enjoy their jobs. I think what we do really well, like just if I took a step back and said, you know what, here's where we've really gotten it right. We find people's strengths and lean into them so that they feel like they are doing what they're put on this planet to do and that they're really, really making a difference every day. Work doesn't feel like work when you're in that zone. And we really do have people that exist in that zone every day. So yes, it's fast paced. Yes, it can be stressful and full of pressure, but I don't think anybody on our team is sitting there like waking up on Monday morning dreading what they have to do because genuinely, you see it in the feedback from our clients. They they know our people by name and, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I just got a note from Charlesy after she saw something I did on Instagram," or "We got flowers from you because somebody in our team's um brother passed away." There's so many little thoughtful things that we empower our team members to do to keep that connection with clients because nothing replaces human relationships. And we know if they're in their strength zone, they have great relationships, they're going to want to be here.
And when you look at the strengths of the team members and try to put them in positions to succeed, is there some way that you're quantifying that? Is it more of a subjective exercise of observing them, or people kind of naturally fall into those places based on self-selection?
There's no objective, like we're not giving everybody a test and saying, here's where you belong. Although we do have a personality test within our software for studio clients, and we have everybody take that here at Walla. So I know like probably my engineers should be thinkers and probably my customer support people should be givers. If we see somebody way outside of the box, that might be just like a mini red flag. Um, but I don't know. I think we've had a lot of years of hiring people, both between my business partner, our CTO, myself. Um, I actually had a background before I started in this industry. I was teaching yoga on the side of my sales career, and my sales career was in headhunting. I was recruiting and selling recruiting services. So I was interviewing hundreds of people a year, and there's so much you learn through sitting with people in a really potent time in their life in a job search, um, where you just start to understand and really read, is this somebody who's coming out of desperation and gonna say anything for the job, or is this someone who understands themselves and has some awareness and can really like I actually want to I hate when people bring up a bullshit weakness, like I want to know what you suck at. I hope you can articulate what you suck at. I certainly can. Like today, our RevOps person who's in charge of making sure the data in our CRM is clean is probably ready to wring my neck because that is my biggest like administrative CRM work I absolutely suck at. And if I don't have somebody helping me with it, I will cripple our data. So I think we try to get to the core of who the person is, and we hire people with a lot of self-awareness.
One thing I've noticed as well is being in the wellness industry, talking to a lot of people that are in the wellness industry, whether it be in tech or hospitality, building community, whatever it might be. Many of them chose it because it was a passion before the
Yes.
career, and they lived it, and it was something that some of them even just fell into because it just made the most sense. And I find
Yeah.
when people are using that is like the path, whether it was conscious or subconscious, it does usually create the conditions necessary where a team can be built of people that self-select to be in an environment where they're doing something that they enjoy because they enjoy the industry, they enjoy who they're helping, they enjoy living a part of their career that's also a part of their personal life. And it's
Yeah.
not that everything needs to be completely overlapping, and in fact, that may not be fully healthy, but the fact that you can work in an industry where you really love who you serve, you really believe in it, I think that that creates the conditions necessary for a team like you're describing.
Yeah, absolutely. The number of people that applied to jobs that start with, you know, I have been teaching yoga for 5 years, or I've been going to this strength studio and it changed my life, or, I found your software because my mom had a hip injury and her Pilates studio uses Walla and it's amazing how much it's changed her life. Like it's really cool to see people lead with the passion and a why before they actually dive into their technical skills.
The internal motivation that happens for someone
Mm,
in that environment rather than needing the external is it's so much stronger.
yeah.
And I'm curious for you, because you grew up playing sports, you grew up in fitness, as a big part of your life prior to the business. Like, how did all of those past experiences influence you choosing to go into this route? And what lessons did
Mm.
you learn from sports that you bring into business?
Yeah, I mean, I credit sports for so much. It's interesting. Almost anytime I reflect on something that I have as a strength or just, what I bring to a room or a table, so much of it goes back to, you know, accountability, being a good team member, making sure that I'm prepared, like that I do the work ahead of time and that I stay mentally sharp, I stay physically healthy. And I think there's just something about knowing how to win. I laugh about it because I'm still psycho competitive and like nobody in my family enjoys playing board games with me. But I definitely knew how to win and I learned how to win. And yeah, I get frustrated when I lose, and I can definitely be down for, a day or two if I lose a deal, but I'll know that I gave it my all. And I was lucky enough to play team sports always. I know some people thrive in individual sport environments. That was just never me. But there is something about knowing, like, when I show up and I'm not my best that day, that I know who the people are that I can lean on and that I can ask for support and that I can be that person for them as well. Um, it's also there's a level of communication that's required within a team, and I think I've brought that into every environment I've worked in as an adult, even in my silly jobs I had, waiting tables or whatever in college. I never have been scared to communicate when we're trying to accomplish a goal. And sometimes that means challenging feedback. Sometimes that means boosting someone up. Sometimes that means self-talk. But it's such a critical part of the process of success and winning and being a team that knows how to continually grow. So I would say sports are the bedrock to any success I've had in business and generally in my um, I guess, the trajectory of my career.
And when you think about your leadership style, it sounds like a lot of that's been informed by sports as well. Are there some things you feel like you do that are just so different or unique as a leader that may come from that background, or anything that you feel like you could speak to on that?
Yeah. So things I do differently as a leader because I have the sports background. One thing, I love celebrating. I am not somebody that's just like, oh, good job. Way to get that deal. Like the volume of GIFs and emojis and quick huddles on Slack or calls, I love celebrating wins. And I think it's such a vital part of the human experience in work because we're beings that spend a tremendous amount of time with our brains in work mode, right? Like since working from home, since the invention of cell phones with internet on them, we are thinking about work a lot of our day. And if we don't have those moments of just like dopamine high, really kick back and look down the mountain and say, hell yes, like we did that and we did it together. I don't know. That's definitely a part of it as an ex-athlete I love to bring to the table. Um, this is something, I mean, I hadn't thought about this until recently when I had an employee say, "Oh, you make us watch ourselves like coaches watch film." And part of that is bringing AI into video recording. So whenever we do demos, when we have team meetings, but particularly demos with prospects when we're looking through the software, I have our team watch film, and our sales leader has the team watch film on themselves and as a team together. So our VP of sales has a weekly meeting where we highlight one or two people's calls and everybody talks about strengths, talks about where we can grow, how we can learn from each other. And I just think back to, like sitting in a room in college playing volleyball, watching, before a game or after a game and just learning from it. So those are two things I would say. Those are directly from my athletic background.
What is Laura's legacy in the wellness industry? What's the movement that you want to be known for creating?
Oh gosh, my legacy in the wellness industry. I mean, first of all, I want to show that it's possible to be so passionate about something and do something outside the box with it. Like for example, that might sound really broad, but I loved yoga. I fell in love with the practice. It cured my asthma. I just absolutely fell in love with yoga. And I also loved business. I also loved sales. And it seemed like those things would never really work together. And I got creative and I decided to kind of marry the two after working in a studio for a little while and started doing consulting for fitness businesses and then started speaking at conferences, coaching the business of yoga and fitness, and then evolving that into software that can help businesses genuinely succeed, be profitable, make an impact in their communities. So I think there are really creative ways to build a business, build a legacy that might not be the normal path.
I just want to open it up to you for anything that you feel like is most important that wasn't said before.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the really interesting moments we're having right now in this industry is just a high level of attention, and not just from the traditional players, like the people who care about fitness, maybe, but people outside of the industry, bankers, investors, people in technology. And part of that is we see a pretty significant amount of the wallet, the spend for Gen Z is dedicated to wellness, to health, and we see a different prioritization. And I think, in general, the fitness industry, kind of that little niche of broader health and wellness, has only been tapped into by, in the US at least, about 20% of the population consistently. And that is broadening quickly. And so obviously where there's more consumer attention, there is money. And I know that's where a lot of people perk up. So it's exciting for me because I think there have been so many incredible ideas, so much innovation, so much advancement in these areas that can really impact longevity, not just lifespan, but I think, the word well span is starting to be used pretty regularly. So actually having a life that's fulfilling and where you feel active longer and longer into your 80s, even 90s. So that excites me. And I think it's something at Walla we've been very intentional about, really looking at how we can support businesses that are weaving wellness practices in, but also being really in tune with the wellness consumer and how they're excited to make purchases, what they're interacting with from a marketing perspective, and how we can make it easier for our customers to acquire those potential consumers and the interest.
Do those statistics and the changes in spending surprise you at all? Or do you feel like there's like a macro trend here is very obvious to you and that you've seen coming?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's very surprising to me because a lot of people learn from their parents and their parents' parents, and that's how things get passed down. Um, but I will say the part that doesn't surprise me is that COVID was kind of the catalyst for this. I think a lot of Gen Z, younger generation, saw what happened to the world in such a startling, alarming, and devastating way, and at the root of all of it was health and wellness, like understanding that the people who had healthy lifestyles were the lowest risk people who, obviously some of that wasn't, you know, predictable because lots of people have genetic predisposed issues, but or challenges. But I think there was a really eye-opening moment, and they saw their parents tap into wellness a little bit more, even if it was short-lived. It was very, very obvious what the solution was. So I think as brutal as COVID was for our industry, for the global economy, there was a light bulb moment in there, and that is very exciting for our industry and just for humanity.
Yeah, it's really put a focus on, I mean, just some core simple things too, of just getting
Right?
sunlight, getting movement, and the
Yes.
importance of just regularly attending your health and not letting things get out of control. So,
Right.
um, and part of that is, you also, I feel like there are people that grow up in a healthy environment, playing sports, you know,
Mhm.
as you look at your background and your life, it seems like a lot of that you could attribute to maybe how you grew up in
Yeah.
competitive environments. And I don't know, was your nutrition really good when you were a kid, or did
Yeah.
you're always healthy? Is this
I mean, the movement side of it, yes. Like,
okay?
no,
Yeah,
I don't remember any time in my life where I wasn't an active kid. But nutrition-wise, I mean, I grew up in an Irish-Italian family in New York, so certainly ate our fair share of, like, spaghetti and meatballs
a lot of
and
pasta. Yeah,
yeah, and steak and
garlic bread.
yeah, totally. I mean, we would have, like, making pasta sauce Sundays with Grammy and, our, I don't know, aunts bringing over giant meatballs that we would eat for snacks after school. So, and my mom baked. But what I will say is it wasn't garbage processed food. It was all homemade. Like I was very lucky to live in a family that um prioritized whole foods and as much as I envied all my friends that could have, Twinkies and Fruity Pebbles and all of the things that my mom was like, "Yeah, it's not really what we're gonna bring into the house." It does, upbringing and how you're raised has a lot to do with all of this, but I think the good thing for Gen Z, and again, what doesn't surprise me is you see this new generation that is highly influenced by social media have, influencers out there spending $400 a month on their Equinox, $500 a month on their Equinox membership or their Pilates studio and their ice plunging. And there is a lot of attention from a social media perspective on certain aspects of the wellness industry and making it kind of like a luxury. I want that life type of situation. So there are a lot of contributing factors. And I think, in general, it's something that most kids, I hear my 14, almost 15-year-old daughter talking to her friends about. They go to P-Volve and Pilates classes. Like, that's cool. I mean, she doesn't because she's playing sports all the time, but the kids that don't, they want to go to fitness classes. It's so incredible. So I don't know. I'm excited for what's to come.
Yeah, that wasn't the way I was thinking about it for sure when I was a kid. So that
No.
is cool. Any last words on just how that influences where you guys are going with Walla, or other thoughts that you want to leave with this audience today?
Yeah, I mean, really the thoughts I wanna leave with the audience is you're in a really exciting position, and I think it's a really great time to start rethinking how you communicate with your potential consumers and not just laser focus on the, 30 to 50-year-old woman who has an expendable income and a little extra time in her day. There are a ton of people outside of that audience that are very interested in your services. And so I keep kind of hammering home this point that the when you're thinking about your ICP, your ideal client for your business, it's not necessarily like an age and a gender or a demographic profile there. It's the identity that the person wants by being a part of your studio. So think about that as you're looking at your marketing for 2026 and beyond, and really starting to consider how you communicate your brand promise and the value proposition to your prospects. Um, and yeah, from Walla's perspective, we're just doing our best to make that like silly easy for you, like our direct integrations with Meta and with Google, and working to make, texting and firing off different communications to different segments as easy as possible. So, our way of doing that is layering in AI as much as possible to take the work out of a lot of it and to bring the critical information to the forefront so that when you're trying to make those business decisions, it's not chasing down 25 different reports and trying to tell yourself a story out of that. It's the story's right in front of you when you open the software with direction on what to do.
That's amazing, and I think that's going to be a path for pretty much any software at this point. Is how do
Yeah,
they use the AI not just to make the data better, but to help the strategic decision making of the person using the software,
exactly.
and like proactively give recommendations. And yeah, it's really interesting to see where the entire wellness space is going to go with AI, because I think it's going to push a lot of really interesting insights to our fingertips. And sounds
Yeah.
like for Walla, that's going to be a main focus with this new round of funding. So very
Yeah,
happy to hear it,
exactly.
and so appreciative of you coming on here. Take care.
Absolutely. All right.